The lights of the studio blazed down like a spotlight of judgment, heat radiating across the polished debate stage. Cameras zoomed in, every lens hungry to capture a moment that might define the night. The audience sat in a restless silence, their anticipation buzzing louder than any applause could. This wasn't just another interview, and everyone knew it. It was prime time, national television, and tonight, reputations were on the line. At the center of it all, the senator leaned forward in his chair, his posture radiating arrogance and assurance. His lips curled into a practiced half-smile, that familiar smirk he had worn so many times in past debates, the same one that said, "I've got this under control." His supporters in the audience could sense it too. He wasn't nervous, he wasn't cautious, he was ready to dominate. The rival sat across from him, calm, steady, composed like a mountain unmoved by the storm winds swirling around it. No flashy expressions, no nervous tapping of fingers, just quiet confidence as if waiting for the storm to spend itself. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. One man fueled by ego, the other anchored by patience. The moderator, sensing the tension, adjusted her papers and asked the next question. "Senator," she began, "you've made repeated claims about your opponent's record. Tonight, do you stand by those accusations?" And there it was. The stage was his. The senator leaned closer to the microphone, his smirk widening into a grin, as if he had been waiting all night for this exact opening. His voice cut through the silence, sharp and rehearsed. "Of course I stand by it. My opponent's record is filled with failure, with weakness, with lies. He wants to pretend he's for the people, but the truth is, he's betrayed them time and time again. You cannot trust someone who bends with the wind. You cannot trust someone who says one thing and does another." Gasps rippled through the audience. His words were cutting, designed to land like daggers. The senator raised his voice, pacing his delivery like an actor who knew every beat of his script. "This man sitting across from me, he's not a leader. He's a fraud. And I'm not afraid to say it right here, in front of the nation. He's not one of us. He's nothing but a liar." The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. The senator leaned back, his smirk triumphant, his supporters breaking into applause. He thought he had landed the knockout punch. He thought the narrative was his to control. He thought the rival would stumble, scramble, try to explain himself, maybe even lose his temper. That was the trap. The smear tactic was designed to humiliate, to unbalance, to destroy credibility before the opponent even had the chance to speak. But then, silence. The rival didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He didn't scramble for words. Instead, he simply looked at the senator, his eyes calm, almost amused, as though he were watching a child throw a tantrum. The silence stretched on, making the senator's confidence waver for just a moment. The smirk twitched at the edges. And here is where the narration cuts in. Commentary layered over the moment like a voice in the audience. Mind. This is the power of restraint. Sometimes silence is louder than words. And in this silence, the senator's smear tactic already began to unravel. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every bead of sweat forming on the senator's brow, every shift in his chair. He had thrown his punch, but it had landed on air. His opponent hadn't fallen. He was still sitting, still calm, still in control. The moderator cleared her throat, shifting nervously. "Would you like to respond?" she asked the rival, breaking the silence. The rival leaned toward his microphone, his voice steady, his tone measured. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't mirror the senator's fire. Instead, he spoke with a calm clarity that immediately cut through the tension. "Senator," he said slowly, "the truth is not something you can twist into whatever shape suits your ambition. The people of this country know the difference between facts and fiction. They've lived it. They've felt it. They've seen what real leadership looks like, and what it doesn't." The audience stirred. Heads turned. Something had shifted. The senator's smirk faltered, the grin replaced with a flicker of uncertainty. But the rival wasn't finished. He let the silence linger again, forcing the senator to sit in the discomfort of his own words. Then, with surgical precision, he added, "You can smear. You can attack, but you cannot erase the truth. And when the truth is revealed, no amount of arrogance can hide it. Gasps swept across the studio. The audience leaned forward, sensing the beginning of something monumental. The senator, caught off guard, shifted in his seat, his rehearsed confidence cracking at the edges. The narration returns here, pulling the audience into reflection. And that was the moment the balance began to shift. The senator thought he was in control. He thought his smear tactic would silence his opponent. But instead, it only set the stage for his own unraveling. The smirk that had been his signature began to fade, replaced with something he hadn't shown in years: doubt. The cameras caught it. Millions of viewers watching from home saw it too. The confidence was cracking, the mask was slipping. And yet, the most shocking part wasn't the rival's calm reply. It wasn't the smirk fading into doubt. It was what came next. Because the rival wasn't done. He had been waiting for this moment. He had prepared for this smear. And the truth he was about to drop would do more than silence the senator. It would dismantle him. Cliffhanger line. But the real story was not in the senator's faltering expression. It was in the truth that was about to be unleashed. A truth so undeniable that it would change the entire course of the night. The senator shifted in his chair, tugging slightly at his cufflinks as the rival's words echoed in the studio. The silence that followed was not the silence of confusion. It was the silence of anticipation. The audience wasn't waiting for the senator to continue. They were waiting to hear more from the rival. For the first time that night, the spotlight had shifted, and it wasn't under the senator's control anymore. The rival leaned forward, speaking with that same calm confidence. His tone wasn't theatrical, but that made it more powerful. He wasn't trying to perform for the cameras. He was speaking as though addressing every living room in America directly. "You said I've betrayed the people," he began, his eyes locked on the senator. "But let's be very clear. Betrayal is making promises you never intend to keep. Betrayal is standing in front of voters every election season with speeches crafted to stir emotions but with no intention of delivering on a single word. Betrayal, Senator, is pretending to fight for the people while secretly serving yourself." A ripple of murmurs ran through the audience. The moderator shifted in her chair, clearly sensing where this was going. The senator opened his mouth to interrupt, but the rival raised a hand slightly, silencing the moment with the smallest gesture of command. "And that," the rival continued, "is exactly what you've done. Not once, not twice, but consistently, year after year." The camera zoomed in on the senator's face. The smirk had fully vanished now, replaced by a tight jaw and narrowed eyes. His hand gripped the armrest of his chair, knuckles pale. The narration slides in here. This is what arrogance cannot prepare for. The smear tactic was designed to rattle, to dominate, to humiliate. But arrogance collapses when it collides with calm truth. And right now, the senator was feeling the weight of truth pressing down on him in front of millions. The rival paused, letting the silence hang once more, then went in for the first devastating blow. "Do you remember the infrastructure bill you promised would bring jobs to thousands in your state?" His voice was sharp now, precise. "You stood in front of cameras. You held rallies. You told working families their roads, bridges, and schools would be rebuilt. But when the time came, when the vote was in front of you, you said no. You turned your back. And why? Because your donors told you to." Gasps erupted from the audience. The moderator leaned back, stunned. The rival didn't stop. "You can call me a fraud. You can throw every insult in the book. But the fact is, Senator, your record speaks louder than your words. And your record is betrayal." The senator's face reddened. He shook his head, trying to laugh it off. "That's a distortion of the truth," he snapped. "Everyone here knows that Bill was flawed." But his voice cracked as he spoke, and the rival struck again. "Flawed?" he repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Tell that to the construction workers who lost their jobs. Tell that to the parents who drive their kids over crumbling bridges every day. Tell that to the teachers still working in schools with leaky roofs because you decided the bill wasn't convenient for you politically." The room went silent again. This wasn't just a debate anymore. This was a takedown, and the narration returned. The senator thought he could smear his opponent into silence. But now he was the one scrambling, his argument slipping through his fingers like sand. The arrogance that had fueled his attack was gone. In its place was panic. Panic broadcast live to the nation. The rival sat back for a moment, folding his hands calmly. His voice softened, but the words cut even deeper. "Senator, you think politics is about who can shout the loudest, who can insult the sharpest, who can spin the best story? But the truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to stand. And tonight it's standing right here." The audience erupted. Applause thundered across the studio. Cheers mingled with gasps, and even the moderator couldn't hide her stunned expression. The senator leaned forward, trying to regain control. "This is ridiculous," he barked, pointing a finger across the stage. "You're twisting everything. You don't understand the realities of governance." But his voice was shaky. The power was gone. His words no longer commanded the room. And the rival, calm as ever, delivered the final line of the exchange. "No, Senator. What I understand, and what the people watching tonight understand, is that governance is not about serving yourself. It's about serving them, and that's something you forgot a long time ago." The senator froze. The audience roared again. Cameras captured every frame of his paling face, every tremor of his hand, every faltering blink. The smear tactic that was supposed to destroy his opponent had backfired spectacularly, leaving him exposed, vulnerable, and on the defensive. Narration. This was the moment the backfire became undeniable. What began as arrogance, as a smear designed to silence, had transformed into the senator's unraveling. He had wanted a viral moment, and he got one. But not the one he expected. Instead of standing victorious, he was left reeling, humiliated, and drowning in the very trap he had set for someone else. The rival sat back, calm and composed, as though he had known this would happen all along. And maybe he had. Because this wasn't just about one argument or one accusation. This was about exposing a pattern, a truth bigger than one debate stage. And as the cameras lingered on the senator's stunned expression, the real story was just beginning. Cliffhanger line. Because the smear tactic may have failed, but what came next would dismantle not just the senator's words, but his entire reputation, live in front of the nation. The applause had barely died down when the senator leaned forward again, gripping the edges of his lectern like it was the only thing anchoring him to the stage. His jaw was set, but his eyes betrayed the flicker of something he hadn't felt in years. Vulnerability. He cleared his throat, forcing a half-smile as though the eruption of cheers for his rival had been nothing but a minor inconvenience. "You know," he began, trying to muster his usual tone of authority, "this all sounds very dramatic. But let's be real. My opponent here doesn't have experience. He doesn't understand how complicated these issues really are. He's painting a pretty picture. But leadership isn't about pretty speeches. It's about making tough choices." His words hung in the air, but something was different. Normally, his deflections landed with practiced ease. Normally, the audience would nod along, giving him space to reset. But not tonight. Tonight, every word he spoke sounded like an excuse. Narration cuts in. Here's the thing about smear tactics. They only work if the audience believes you hold the higher ground. But once the mask slips, once your own credibility cracks, every word you speak sounds hollow. And for this senator, the mask had shattered on live television. The rival tilted his head slightly, his expression a mixture of pity and resolve. He let the senator finish, then leaned forward again. His voice was soft, but steady enough to silence the room. "Tough choices?" he asked. "Senator, it's not a tough choice to decide whether kids deserve safe schools. It's not a tough choice to decide whether workers deserve jobs. It's not a tough choice to keep your promises. The only tough choice here is admitting you didn't make those choices because you cared about the people. You made them because you cared about your donors." The audience gasped again. The rival wasn't just rebutting policy. He was going for the core of the senator's character, stripping away the polished veneer and exposing what lay beneath. The senator chuckled nervously, shaking his head. "This is classic," he said, raising his hand as if swatting away a fly. "Classic outsider move. Pretend you're the hero. paint the seasoned leaders as villains. But let me remind everyone watching, I've been serving this nation for decades. I've fought for legislation, I've stood my ground on international issues, But he didn't get to finish. The rival interrupted, his words slicing through the senator's practiced monologue. "You've been serving for decades," he said firmly. "That's true. But tell me, Senator, serving who?" The silence that followed was deafening. The senator blinked, caught mid-sentence. The rival's question didn't need embellishment. It was a dagger dressed as curiosity, but its impact was lethal. Narration interjects. This is what happens when rhetoric collides with reality. The senator wanted to paint himself as a seasoned warrior of politics, but experience means nothing if that experience is built on betrayal. The rival wasn't fighting him with insults. He was fighting him with truth. And truth doesn't need volume to win. It only needs clarity. The senator's smile faltered. He tried to regain control. "I serve the American people," he said quickly, his voice rising slightly. "That's why I'm here. That's why I've always been here." But the rival shook his head slowly. "No, Senator. You serve yourself. And deep down, I think even you know that." The audience gasped louder than before, their reaction echoing like a gavel striking down judgment. The moderator, clearly realizing she was witnessing a historic moment, leaned in. "Senator," she said carefully, "would you like to respond directly? He's accusing you of self-interest over public service." The senator bristled, his voice suddenly sharp, defensive. "Of course I'll respond. This whole thing is absurd. Look, you don't last in this business if you're just serving yourself. You last because people trust you, because they elect you, because you deliver results." His words tumbled out too fast, too forceful. It was the sound of a man trying to convince not just the audience, but himself. The rival waited patiently, then delivered the strike that would echo far beyond the debate stage. "You're right," he said evenly. "You don't last this long if people see the truth. You last because you're good at hiding it. But tonight, the hiding stops." The senator froze, his lips parting slightly, but no words came out. The rival's line wasn't just an accusation, it was a revelation. It framed the senator's entire career, not as longevity earned through trust, but as a deception that had finally run its course. The narration slides back in. And just like that, the tables turned completely. The smear had not only backfired, it had become a spotlight, illuminating the cracks the senator had spent years trying to cover. And in that light, the truth was blinding. The rival leaned back, folding his arms as though the matter was settled. The audience broke into applause again, some even standing. The cameras panned to the senator, who sat rigid, his smile now entirely gone, his hands trembling slightly against the podium. He tried to fire back one more time, his voice cracking with frustration. "You think you're clever," he snapped. "You think sound bites and theatrics win debates, but the American people aren't stupid. They'll see through this performance." But his rival didn't flinch. He leaned forward once more, eyes locked with the senator's, and delivered the line that would define the night. "This isn't a performance, Senator. This is accountability. And maybe for the first time in your career, you're finally facing it." The crowd erupted, louder than ever before. The moderator's attempts to calm the room were futile. The energy had exploded beyond her control. Narration delivers the takeaway. This was the breaking point. The smear tactic had not only failed, it had ignited the very fire the senator wanted to avoid. He had walked onto that stage convinced of his dominance, but arrogance blinded him to the power of truth. And when the truth came for him, it left no place to hide. The cameras closed in once again on his face, capturing every flicker of defeat, every twitch of anger, every ounce of pride collapsing under the weight of exposure. Millions of viewers were witnessing not just a debate, but the unraveling of a man who thought he could never be touched. And as the rival sat calmly, composed, and victorious in demeanor, the nation knew. The smear had backfired so badly that it might not just cost the senator the debate, it might cost him everything. Cliffhanger line. But the night wasn't over yet, because the rival wasn't finished, and what came next would deliver the ultimate blow. sealing the senator's fate live on air. The cameras lingered on the senator, his lips pressed tight, his jaw working furiously as though chewing back words he could no longer shape into weapons. For the first time in his long career, silence had become his enemy. He shifted in place, adjusted his tie, then finally blurted out, "You think you've exposed something? You've exposed nothing. These accusations, these cheap theatrics, mean nothing outside of this stage. The real world is more complicated. The voters know who gets things done, and they know it's me." The words came fast, laced with frustration, but they lacked the thunder of conviction. The audience wasn't buying it. Their muted response told the whole story. The senator's once commanding voice had devolved into background noise. Narration cuts in, reflective and sharp. Here's the cruel truth about politics. Power isn't just about the title you hold. It's about the perception you create. For years, this senator had mastered the art of perception. But when the curtain is torn away, when the crowd finally sees the machinery behind the performance, the illusion shatters. And tonight, his illusion lay in ruins. The rival didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply leaned into his microphone, his tone steady, almost surgical. "Senator, you keep talking about voters knowing you. You're right. They do know you. They know your record. They know your broken promises. And tonight they've seen what happens when your back is against the wall. You don't answer questions. You attack. You don't take responsibility. You deflect. And that is not leadership." The senator clenched his fists on the podium, his knuckles whitening. He opened his mouth to respond, but the rival's voice carried over him, calm and unwavering. "And maybe that's the real reason this debate matters. Not because of what I've said, but because of what you've shown. You've shown the country exactly who you are when you're challenged, and now there's no taking it back." The studio fell into stunned silence. Even the moderator paused, her hands frozen above her notes. The weight of the rival's words settled like a hammer. The senator tried to salvage control, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "Oh, come on. Don't pretend you're some saint. You've been in this game 5 minutes. You have no idea what real pressure looks like." And that's when it happened. The rival delivered the final devastating blow. "You're right," he said softly. "I haven't been in this game long. But that's the difference between us, Senator. This is still a public service to me. To you, it's just a game." Gasps, applause, whispers that built into cheers. The audience couldn't contain themselves any longer. It wasn't just a line, it was the death knell to the senator's performance. Narration weaves in. One line, that's all it takes. One line to cut through years of speeches, campaigns, and carefully polished rhetoric. The rival didn't just defeat the senator's argument, he revealed the emptiness beneath it. And in doing so, he turned the debate into something much larger than politics. It became a moment of reckoning. The senator looked around desperately, eyes darting from the moderator to the crowd to the cameras. He could feel the narrative slipping away. He tried again, raising his voice in a final act of defiance. "You people cheer now, but leadership isn't about applause lines. It's about results, about making the hard calls. You'll see, I'll still be standing when the dust settles." But even as he spoke, the dust was already settling. And it was clear to everyone watching, he was standing alone. The rival lowered his microphone slowly, almost ceremonially, and said nothing more. He didn't need to. The silence became his weapon, and in that silence, the senator's words withered away. The moderator finally stepped in, her voice steady but tinged with awe. "Gentlemen, we have to move to closing statements. Senator, you'll go first." The senator nodded stiffly, swallowing hard. He began his closing remarks with all the fire he could muster, but it sounded rehearsed, hollow, disconnected from the storm that had just unfolded. His words echoed off walls already lined with doubt. When it was the rival's turn, he stepped forward, placed both hands calmly on the podium, and spoke directly into the camera. "My opponent calls this a game, but I don't believe public service is a game. It's not about winning a point or scoring applause. It's about fighting for the truth and fighting for the people who can't stand here themselves. Tonight, you've seen the difference between us. And it's not about experience, or titles, or years in office. It's about honesty. And I promise you this: no smear tactic, no distraction, and no career politician will ever change my commitment to that. The audience erupted into a standing ovation. The cameras cut between the rival's calm, resolute face and the Senator's forced smile, an image that told the story better than words ever could. Narration returns for the close, heavy with reflection. And there it was. The end of the debate, but the beginning of something bigger. A smear tactic meant to destroy had instead exposed the one who wielded it. On live television, a career politician's armor cracked, and the truth poured through the gap. Millions at home didn't just watch a debate. They watched the unraveling of arrogance, the triumph of honesty, and the moment a single line became a mic drop for the ages. The lights dimmed, the credits rolled, but the moment lived on. In clips replayed online, in headlines that followed, in conversations that echoed long after the cameras stopped. And for the senator, the worst part wasn't losing the debate. The worst part was knowing that his smear would be remembered not as an attack, but as his downfall. Final call to action from the narration. Moments like these remind us why truth matters, why arrogance can never outlast honesty, and why sometimes the most powerful thing in politics isn't the loudest voice, but the clearest one. If you believe in that truth, share this story, subscribe for more, and join us as we keep shining a light on the moments that change everything.